There is exactly one kind of crayfish that truly belongs in California, and it was quietly disappearing. Not because the state had run out of clean water or wild places, but because another crayfish, a bigger, hungrier, invading one, was eating it out of existence, the same way that Invader had already wiped a sister species off the earth completely. By the time anyone moved to save it, California's only native crayfish was down to a few thousand survivors at most, tucked into a handful of cold spring pools in one small northern corner of the state, and found nowhere else on the planet. Every weapon anyone had tried against the invader had failed. So a small team tried something stranger, and in a moment I will show you the dry, dead ditch they turned into a fortress for the last of a species. This is what happened. The animal at the center of it is easy to overlook. It is a stocky little crustacean, only 2 to 4 inches long, dark brown across the back, so it vanishes against the rock with a hidden splash of bright orange underneath and a pair of heavy blunt claws. It moves slowly and lives quietly, which is why one of its old names is the placid crayfish. It spends its whole life in cold, clear, spring-fed water, sheltering under stones, grazing on algae and snails, asking for almost nothing. The water it lives in is a world of its own. This is volcanic country, where rain and snowmelt vanish into porous lava and travel underground through dark tubes and fractures, sometimes for years, before rising again, ice-cold and crystal clear, in a scatter of springs. Those springs feed creeks and lakes, so clean they are famous for their wild trout, and it is in the coldest, rockiest of them that the native crayfish makes its living. It is fussy about every part of this. It needs the cold, it needs the clarity, it needs the steady flow and the loose volcanic stone, and it breeds slowly and sparingly. That narrowness is part of what makes it so special and part of what makes it so easy to lose. And here is the first thing worth sitting with. This is not just a rare crayfish. It is the only crayfish native to the entire state, an evolutionary one-off that exists in a few spring creeks and lakes in one volcanic pocket of Northern California, and absolutely nowhere else in the world. Lose it here, and it is gone everywhere forever. It has been here far longer than we have, shaped over an immense stretch of time to fit one very particular kind of cold volcanic water, a living piece of a landscape that exists almost nowhere else on Earth. For most of its long history, it had this cold, rocky water to itself. Then, last century, a stranger arrived. The invader is the signal crayfish, and on paper, it looks like the same animal, just more of it. It is larger, faster, and far more aggressive. It breeds quickly, eats almost anything, including the eggs and young of the natives, and it carries a disease, a kind of crayfish plague that the native has no defense against. Once it is in a waterway, it does not stop. It outcompetes the natives for shelter. It preys on them directly, and it simply takes over. And the scale of the mismatch is hard to believe. In a single California lake, the invaders have been estimated to number in the hundreds of millions in one lake. The entire native species, across every spring and pool it has left, numbers a few thousand. That is the fight. On one side, an animal so abundant it was once shipped overseas by the ton as food. On the other, a few thousand slow, quiet survivors in a shrinking pocket of cold water. We already know exactly how that story ends because it has already happened once. California used to have a second native crayfish, a dark little species in the San Francisco Bay Area. The invaders reached it, and today that species is extinct, not endangered. Gone. An entire animal erased from the world. It took only a few decades. A lineage that had survived for ages, snuffed out inside a single human lifetime. So, when the same invader closed in on California's last native crayfish, everyone understood what was at stake, and they understood it was losing. People tried to fight the invader head-on. They tried trapping the signal crayfish out. They tried electrofishing the streams. They tried building barriers across the water to hold the line. And the hard truth, admitted by the biologists themselves, is that none of it worked. You cannot trap your way out of an animal that breeds like this. and walks overland between pools. Every season, the invaders pressed a little closer to the last strongholds of the native, and the people trying to protect it were running out of room and running out of time. The biologists were blunt about why nothing stuck. The invader hides in every crevice of a rocky stream. It can crawl overland from one pool to the next, and it breeds far faster than any trap can keep pace with, short of draining and poisoning whole waterways, which would kill the very natives they were trying to save. There was no clean way to pull the invader back out. Once it was in, removal, everyone slowly admitted, was a losing game. If watching people refuse to let a species quietly slip away is the kind of thing you are here for, take a second to subscribe, because this is the part where they stop fighting the invader and try something almost backwards instead. The idea was this: if you cannot get the invader out of the native's home, then build the native a brand new home the invader has never been able to reach, and move the survivors there by hand. It sounds almost too simple, and it turned on a single crucial insight about what makes a place safe. A refuge for this crayfish needed three things. It needed cold, clean, constant spring water. It needed a rocky bottom to hide in, and above all, it needed to be completely cut off from the invaders, with no path for a signal crayfish to ever walk or swim in. Finding all three in one place is almost impossible, because anywhere good enough for the native is usually already infested, and this is where the story takes its strangest turn. The perfect spot turned out to be a mistake. Decades earlier, the water that once fed a particular meadow creek had been piped away and diverted to supply a nearby trout hatchery, and the old creek channel had simply been left to go dry. It had been a dead, empty ditch since the 1950 seconds, bone dry for 60 to 70 years. Everyone had treated it as a loss. But think about what that long dryness actually meant. For 60 years, no water had connected it to anything, which meant no invading crayfish had ever reached it, or ever could on their own. Say, the very neglect that killed the creek had quietly turned it into the one thing the native needed most: a clean slate, sealed off from the enemy. All it needed was to be brought back to life. So that is what a coalition of people set out to do, and it was not a weekend project. The United States Fish and Wildlife Service, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the power company that ran the water system, and a small ecological science firm formed a working group and spent years on it. None of it was quick. From the first plans to flowing water, the effort ran across the better part of a decade, a slow accumulation of permits, engineering, and careful hands. First, they had to solve the water without starving the hatchery, so they moved the diversion downstream, a careful piece of plumbing that let the hatchery keep its clean supply while the old creek got its water back. Then came the rebuild. The dead channel had been straightened and choked, so they reshaped it back into a natural meandering creek of the width and depth it once had. They built a new structure at the lower end to control the flow. They carved out deep, calm pools where the crayfish could rest. They stripped away the sod and dead vegetation that had buried the creek bed, uncovering the original lava rock bottom underneath, the exact volcanic stone this animal evolved to live in. And then they did something that tells you everything about how carefully this was done. They hand-placed large lava rocks throughout the creek as shelter, and each rock had to pass a very specific test. It had to be big enough for a crayfish to hide safely underneath, light enough that a person could still lift it into place, and heavy enough that a raccoon could never flip it over to dig the crayfish out. An entire creek built rock by rock to that standard. But even a perfect creek full of perfect rocks was not ready yet, because a crayfish cannot eat stone. It needs a living food web, the algae and worms and snails. So after the water came back, the team did the hardest thing of all. They waited. They let the rebuilt creek run, clean and cold and empty, for long enough that the plants and the tiny creatures could colonize the rocks and build up a real food supply, so that when the crayfish finally arrived, there would be something for them to eat. It is a strange kind of patience, building a house and then refusing to move anyone in until the pantry is stocked, but a crayfish dropped into clean, empty water would simply starve. So the creek ran on, cold and clear and looking almost lifeless, while invisibly it filled with the small living things that turn a channel of water into into a home. By around 2016, the channel was flowing again, and roughly 6/10 of a mile of cold, clear water now ran where there had been a dry ditch for over half a century. By 2019, the food web had taken hold, and the creek was finally ready for its residents. Remember why this particular creek mattered so much. It was the one place the invaders had never reached and could never reach on their own. A sealed room in a house that was burning, and the residents were precious, almost beyond counting. Remember, this was never a story about thousands of animals. The entire species numbers only a few thousand at most, so the rescue did not move a flood of crayfish. It moved a trickle of irreplaceable survivors, the rarest individuals of the rarest crayfish in the state. Years earlier, the team had run a small, cautious test of the whole idea, relocating just 28 crayfish into an isolated spring pond to see whether moving them by hand could even work. 28. That was the scale of the experiment that the entire approach rested on. The numbers stayed small on purpose because every animal moved was a gamble with a species, and the team watched each relocation closely to learn what the crayfish needed. Not every attempt was a clean triumph. Relocation at these numbers is delicate work, and the scientists were careful never to oversell it. But the principle held, and the rebuilt creek was a far larger and better home than any test pond could ever be, and the work itself was about as far from dramatic as conservation gets. There were no helicopters and no crowds. It came down to a biologist with a bucket, lifting the last native crayfish of California a few at a time, carrying them to the new creek, and gently tucking each one beneath a lava rock chosen exactly for the purpose. In water, slow, quiet, patient work, the same temperament as the animal it was trying to save. And the meaning of it reaches far past one creek. This was the first refuge of its kind ever built for this species, a proof that when you cannot beat the invader, you can still outflank it by engineering a brand new sanctuary from a forgotten scrap of land and moving the survivors in. Every native crayfish now living in that rebuilt creek is one the invaders cannot reach, sheltered in clean, cold water that did not exist a few years ago. It is not a guarantee. Conservation at these tiny numbers is fragile, and the people doing it are honest about that. But it is a genuine hedge against extinction, a backup copy of a species kept in a place of safety, and it is a template that can be repeated, one rescued creek at a time, wherever another sealed-off spring can be found and brought back. Think of it as an ark. You cannot drain the whole flood at once, but you can build one safe vessel, get the irreplaceable aboard, and keep the lineage alive until the waters change. This was the first ark of its kind for this animal, and now the blueprint exists for the next. There was an unexpected gift in the work, too. To save a crayfish, they had to resurrect an entire stream. The same rebuild that gave the native its fortress also brought back 6/10 of a mile of cold, clean, meandering, spring-fed creek, the food web that lives in it, the pools, the rock, the flow, all of it returned to a valley famous for its cold water springs and its wild trout, and all of it done without taking a drop from the hatchery that depended on the same water. One careful project quietly served the crayfish, the creek, and the people all at once. The springs that feed this country carry some of the cleanest water in the state, the lifeblood of a valley known for its trout and its waterfowl, and a healthy, flowing, rocky creek is good for far more than one crustacean. In building a home for the rarest animal in the watershed, they had also brought back a living piece of the watershed itself. And every so often, the whole effort comes down to a single image worth holding on to. A small dark crayfish, orange flashing on its underside, backing slowly under a lava rock that human hands placed there on purpose, settling into the cold, clear current of a creek that the world had written off as dead 60 years before. So here is what this little animal actually teaches us, and it is worth remembering. It was not vanishing because the world had run out of room for it, or because some force too large to fight had decided its time was over. It was vanishing from something specific and, as it turned out, something you could outmaneuver. And the people who cared about it did not look away and call it the cost of progress. They studied the problem until they understood it exactly. They admitted honestly when the obvious fixes failed. They found the strange opportunity hiding inside an old mistake, and they rebuilt a dead creek rock by rock, then carried the last survivors home by the bucketful. It is easy to believe that saving a species must take something vast and impossible. This creek says otherwise. Sometimes it takes patience, an honest look at what is really killing a thing, the right partnership, and a single safe place built with your own hands. Somewhere in the cold spring country of Northern California tonight, water is running over lava rock in a creek that was silent for 60 years. And beneath those stones, the last native crayfish of an entire state is doing exactly what it has always done. Quietly, placidly, alive. If stories like this one are why you are here, this is what this channel is for. Follow along, and we will keep bringing you the places where the natural world is quietly winning.